The turkey wasn't the only thing that got roasted at Thanksgiving dinner this year. I'd spent 18 months waiting for this moment, watching my mother-in-law Patricia parade around in her new designer clothes and show off her luxury spa treatments, all while my husband and I pinched pennies to repay a loan we never received. I married David 5 years ago, shortly after his father passed away. Richard had been the buffer between Patricia's materialistic demands and the real world, and his death left a void she seemed determined to fill with whatever she could buy. The life insurance policy was substantial, $300,000, with David as the sole beneficiary. He'd always been responsible with money, just like his father. That's why the $50,000 loan situation never sat right with me. It started last spring when David mentioned we needed to start making payments on the loan we'd taken from his father's life insurance money. I remember standing in our kitchen, coffee mug frozen halfway to my lips, completely confused. "What loan?" I asked. "The one Mom said we took last year," he replied, scrolling through his phone. "For the house repairs, remember? She said we agreed to pay it back with 3% interest. But we hadn't taken any loan. We'd been saving for the repairs ourselves, putting away a little each month. I knew this because I managed our finances, a task I'd taken over after discovering David's tendency to forget billing dates. "David," I said carefully, "we never took that loan." He looked up from his phone, frowning. "Mom said we did. She showed me the transfer records." That was the moment I should have pushed harder, should have demanded to see those records. But David had been stressed at work, and Patricia had always been good at manipulating situations to make me look like the difficult one. So instead, I started investigating quietly. It took me weeks to piece it together. Patricia had access to David's accounts as a legacy from when he was younger, something we'd never thought to change. The transfer records she'd shown David were real, but they weren't to us. They were to her own account, disguised as a loan to her son. But I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable evidence that would make David see the truth about his mother's deception. So I waited, documented, and watched as Patricia bought a new car, went on a luxury cruise, and booked a week-long gambling trip to Vegas, all while we struggled to make payments on a loan we never received. Now, sitting at her elaborate Thanksgiving dinner, watching her serve turkey on her new Wegwood china, I finally had everything I needed. "The stuffing is a family recipe," Patricia was saying, smoothing her expensive new tablecloth. "Of course, some people prefer to experiment with tradition. But I believe in keeping things authentic." The dig was aimed at me. I'd offered to bring my grandmother's cornbread stuffing, only to be told that real stuffing didn't include cornbread. Classic Patricia. David's sister Lauren shot me a sympathetic look across the table. She'd never been her mother's favorite either, choosing to become a teacher instead of the lawyer Patricia had wanted. Now she sat with her husband Mark and their 2 kids, playing with her food more than eating it. "Speaking of family matters," David said, reaching for the gravy, "Honey, did you set up those loan payments to Mom? She mentioned they were late." The table went quiet. Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. "Actually," I said, taking a sip of water, "I've been meaning to discuss that. It's interesting that the payments are late, considering we never received the loan in the first place." Patricia's face flushed. "Don't be ridiculous. I helped you both out when you needed it. The transfer records show the money going to your account," I finished for her. "Not ours." David looked between us, confusion clouding his features. "What are you talking about?" Patricia laughed, but it sounded forced. "Your wife is obviously confused. I clearly remember. Your trip to Vegas," I cut in. "The one you took right after the mysterious loan transfer? Or maybe the new car you bought? The spa memberships? Mom?" David's voice had taken on an edge I'd never heard before. "What is she talking about?" Patricia dabbed at her lips with her napkin, silk, like everything else she bought with our supposed loan. "David, sweetheart, your wife is trying to cause trouble. You know how she gets around the holidays." But I was done being the scapegoat. I reached for my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "I have the bank records," I said quietly. "The real ones, showing exactly where that $50,000 went. Would you like to tell David the truth, Patricia, or should I?" Lauren's kids, sensing the tension, asked to be excused. Mark quickly ushered them into the living room, leaving the adults in a thick silence broken only by the sound of Patricia's expensive bracelet clicking against her wine glass. "Mom?" David prompted again, his voice harder now. Patricia's face went through a series of expressions: indignation, fear, and finally, a calculated sympathy that made my skin crawl. "Darling," she began, reaching for David's hand, "after your father died, I was in such a dark place. The money, I just needed something to help me feel alive again. I was going to pay it back before." "Before what?" I interrupted. "Before David found out you stole from him. Before the payments we've been struggling to make broke us financially. Or before your next shopping spree." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with Patricia's new silver butter knife. David sat frozen, his face a mask of disbelief as he stared at his mother. "Let me see the records," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. My hands didn't shake as I opened the envelope. I'd been preparing for this moment for too long. One by one, I laid out the bank statements, the transfer records, and screenshots of Patricia's social media posts bragging about her self-care purchases, each dated just days after the money disappeared. "There's more," I said, pulling out my phone. "Would you like to see the Instagram stories of your Vegas trip, Patricia? The ones you thought disappeared after 24 hours. I saved them all." Lauren leaned forward, her own dinner forgotten. "Mom, you didn't." "Oh, but she did," I continued, turning my phone so everyone could see. "Here's Patricia at the Bellagio showing off her lucky slot machine. And here she is at the Channel store, buying a $4,000 handbag, the same day David and I had to decline Emma's school trip because we couldn't afford it while making loan payments." Emma's trip, David's voice cracked. Our niece's face fell at the mention of the school trip she'd been so excited about. Patricia's carefully maintained facade began to crack. "Now, don't be dramatic. Emma's trip wasn't that important. She cried for days." Lauren cut in, her quiet voice carrying an unexpected steel. "She'd been practicing her French all year for that Paris trip." "Well, if your husband had a better job," Patricia began, but Lauren cut her off. "Don't you dare." Lauren's hands gripped the edge of the table. "Mark works harder than anyone I know. We live within our means, which is more than I can say for you." Patricia's face hardened. "I deserve that money. After everything I've been through, losing Richard." "We all lost Dad," David interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "But you're the only one who used it as an excuse to steal." "Steal?" Patricia's voice rose an octave. "I am your mother. Everything I've done has been for this family. When you were children—" "When we were children," Lauren interjected, "Dad handled the money. Now we know why." I pulled out one final piece of paper, the one that had taken the most time to track down. "Would you like to explain the second mortgage on your house, Patricia? The one Dad didn't know about." The color drained from Patricia's face. David and Lauren exchanged shocked looks. "What second mortgage?" they asked in unison. "The one your mother took out 3 months before your father died," I explained, sliding the document across the table. "Richard never knew because Patricia forged his signature. The bank's fraud department has been very helpful in my investigation." Patricia's hands began to shake, causing her wine to slosh dangerously close to her precious tablecloth. "You had no right to investigate me." "Actually," I corrected her, "as the victims of your financial fraud, we had every right." The bank thought so too, especially when they saw the pattern. "Pattern?" David asked, his voice hollow. I nodded. "The second mortgage, the credit cards in your father's name, and now the stolen $50,000. It's all documented here." Patricia stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "This is ridiculous. I'm your mother, David. Are you going to believe these lies?" "Lies," Lauren's quiet voice carried across the table. "Like the lie about my college fund disappearing because of market crashes? Was that you too, Mom?" Patricia's silence was answer enough. "How long?" David asked, staring at the documents. "How long have you been stealing from us?" "I haven't been stealing." Patricia's voice rose hysterically. "I was borrowing. I was going to pay it all back. I just needed a little more time, a few more trips to Vegas. To gamble away more of our money." I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. "You," Patricia turned on me, her perfectly manicured finger pointing accusingly. "You did this. You turned my children against me. You could have kept quiet. Let me handle this privately, but you had to make a spectacle. Like you made a spectacle of yourself on social media." I pulled up another saved post. "Here's you bragging about your new spa membership while we canceled our car insurance to make your loan payments. Is that the kind of privacy you wanted? David stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floors Patricia had insisted on installing last summer, probably with more stolen money. I want to see everything, he said quietly. Every document, every transaction, every lie. And then, Mom, you're going to pay back every penny. But I don't have the money, Patricia wailed. I spent it. Then you'll sell the car, Lauren suggested coldly, and the designer bags and the jewelry. And maybe, if you're lucky, we won't press charges for fraud. Patricia sank back into her chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her like the untouched turkey getting cold on her expensive china. I'm your mother, she whispered, but the words sounded hollow now, stripped of their usual power. The aftermath of Thanksgiving's revelations hit our family like a hurricane. Within a week, Patricia's carefully curated life began to unravel. The luxury car was sold, though it only recovered a fraction of what she'd stolen. Her designer wardrobe appeared on consignment sites, and her country club membership was terminated. But it wasn't enough. The total is worse than we thought, David said one evening, poring over the financial records with our lawyer. With the second mortgage, the credit cards, and everything else, she stole nearly $200,000 over the past 5 years. The number hung in the air between us, staggering in its magnitude. This wasn't just about our $50,000 anymore. This was about a pattern of deception that had spanned years. Lauren found her college fund documents hidden in Patricia's attic. $45,000 that had supposedly been lost to market crashes had actually funded Patricia's first gambling spree. The revelation hit Lauren hard. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, she said during one of our family meetings, her voice tight with anger. I'm still paying off student loans, while she was living it up with my money. Patricia, for her part, cycled between remorse and righteous indignation. She showed up at our house one morning, mascara streaked down her face. I'm seeing a gambling counselor, she announced, as if that would fix everything. And a therapist. They say I have addiction issues stemming from losing your father. Dad would be ashamed, David replied quietly, closing the door in her face. It was the first time I ever seen him stand up to his mother so firmly, and despite the pain it caused him, I was proud. The bank's fraud department proved invaluable in tracking down every penny. They found transfers we hadn't even known about, including one particularly shocking discovery. Patricia had tried to access David's retirement account just 2 weeks before our Thanksgiving confrontation. She would have cleaned us out, David said, his voice hollow, if you hadn't figured it out. But I had figured it out, and now we had choices to make. Lauren and Mark decided to press charges for the college fund theft. David and I opted for a legally binding repayment agreement instead. Patricia would work part-time at Lauren's school as an administrative assistant, with her salary going directly toward repaying her debts. It's more than she deserves, Lauren said when we told her our decision. But maybe seeing honest people work for honest money will teach her something. 3 months after Thanksgiving, we held another family dinner, this time at our house. The table wasn't set with expensive china, but with the mismatched plates David and I had collected over our years together. Each one had a story, a memory attached to it. Patricia came wearing clothes from Target instead of Gucci, her previously salon-perfect hair showing gray at the roots. She sat quietly through dinner, a shadow of her former imperious self. I got Emma's school trip refunded, she said during dessert, her voice small. The Paris one. I called in some favors, explained the situation. She can go this summer if she wants. Lauren's eyes filled with tears as Emma squealed with delight. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. After dinner, as everyone was leaving, Patricia lingered in our doorway. I never thought I'd end up here, she admitted. When your father died, I felt so lost. The shopping, the gambling, it made me feel in control. But I was never in control, was I? No, I said gently, you weren't. She nodded, adjusting her non-designer purse on her shoulder. Thank you, she said suddenly. For what? For stopping me before I lost everything. My counselor says, she says addicts don't stop until they hit rock bottom. You caught me before I dragged everyone down with me. She left after that, walking to her used Toyota instead of calling an Uber Black like she used to. David wrapped his arm around my waist as we watched her drive away. Think she's really changed, he asked. Time will tell, I replied. But at least now she knows someone's watching. That night, as we got ready for bed, David found me looking at our wedding photo, the one where Patricia had insisted on standing between us. You know what's funny? He said, wrapping his arms around me. All those years she kept saying you weren't good enough for this family. Turns out you were the one protecting it all along. I turned in his arms, thinking about family and money and the true cost of secrets. We protect what we love, I said simply. And I love you, even if your mother thinks Target clothes are a fate worse than death. He laughed, and for the first time since Thanksgiving, it sounded real. We're still working through it all, the betrayal, the theft, the lies. Patricia attends her counseling sessions and makes her payments. Lauren's daughter is practicing her French with renewed enthusiasm. And our family dinners, while simpler now, feel more honest. Sometimes healing comes with a price tag, but it's one worth paying.